This podcast is brought to you in part by the support of the AMTV patrons. Thank you. Hello everybody and welcome back to AMTV Radio. This is the podcast where I'm joined by a very special guest each time and we chat about, well, whatever we want to really. And for today's guest, I'm joined by one of the most recognisable faces in the YouTube community. Someone who's been creating content for over 10 years now, which feels really weird that YouTube's been a thing for that long. I'm joined today by Will Carlisle, or as many of you probably know him, Mr. TARDIS. How you doing, Will?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. How are you doing? You all good?
Yeah, as I've been saying this whole season, as well as any of us can, given the current state of things. But yeah.
But yeah, thankfully it's cold outside, but everyone's inside, so
that's
it's the best.
And it's nice and warm. For those on YouTube, you can see I've positioned myself right next to the radiator here, so I've played this well.
Very cool. But I'm just looking at all those badges and pins and everything on the back.
That took a long time, man. That was a long process. And
is there a particular order? Like, is it chronological, or you color coordinated, alphabetical?
I wish I was that methodical. I think the only organized thing do you remember in the 50th anniversary, like they did the Doctor Who pin badges there? I sort of got all them together.
I remember, yes.
But yeah.
Oh, you did a video about it, didn't you?
I did, yeah. Because I remember at the time I really wanted them back in 2013, and for whatever reason I just didn't buy them, and then. Like anything in the Doctor Who world, you go to eBay and people are like £60, £70, £80, and I was like, can't do it. I just got very lucky.
I was looking at Series 2 Steelbooks last night.
Oh, mate.
It's the one missing from my regular series collection. It's like £300. It's like, no, can't do that.
It's so mad, isn't it? Because I know that I think the season one's the worst one, the Eccleston one, for the price, I think now. Like, I looked on... I got mine from a mate who was like, he did me a very good deal, but I think I noticed on the CEX website, I think they wanted like 180 quid for it, and I was like, this is wrong. This is just morally wrong.
I was very lucky. I got Series 3 and the 2009 specials. They were sent to me by people.
Oh, nice.
Like, people are like, oh, they're missing from your collection. I've not even opened mine. I don't want it. Like, send it to you. It's like, thanks. Yeah. Great.
Well,
I was very lucky.
If anyone's listening, those two Dalek movie steelbooks, if you don't want them anymore, just hit me up. I've got 2 free spaces, So.
For Dalek steelbooks, you can make sure Adam never goes bored again.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, or bankrupt, more like. So
you'll always have that.
I'll always have that
to trade in if you have to.
Forever got my bank tab up, looking at that slowly decreasing number. Yeah, I don't
take rent, but I take steelbooks.
Absolutely. Oh, that'd be me as a landlord. But pay me in Doctor Who merchandise, and we'll be all good. But as I say, a lot of people watching / listening will know who you are and your presence on YouTube. But for maybe those of you who perhaps aren't familiar, do you want to give like a little rundown on who you are and what you do?
Yes, basically, I'm been talking about Doctor Who online for about 10, coming on 11 years now. And mainly started off at the beginning of Series 5, so it was during that transitionary period between Russell T Davies, David Tennant to Stephen Moffat, Matt Smith, and I was perusing forums, and it was one of those cases where, like, if you just existed as like just a post on a screen that could easily be ignored, and I thought I want to properly engage in conversation, so I made up my own content, my own channel. Windows Movie Maker, very cheap microphone, and it shows, it absolutely shows. But like since then, been talking about Doctor Who and some other TV shows and movies and things like that for a long time now, and kind of settling in a good groove now as my place in the fandom as the guy who talks way too in depth about Doctor Who stuff, and the guy who just yells on Twitter all the time, which I'm trying to cut back. That's my New Year's resolution.
Okay.
But for online stuff, just talking. Spreading out a bit more into things like Big Finish and the expanded media, because Doctor Who is only going to be on like this like 8 weeks a year now for Series 13, so we've got to fill up the gap somehow. But it's just a loving community to be a part of. Very grateful to have been accepted into it, and been able to be involved in shows and discussions such as this one with yourself, and it's just a really loving, fun community to talk about. And I'm that guy who hates Asylum of the Daleks and goes way too in depth talking about stuff but it's fun. It's my niche.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you found your niche, because I think, especially probably more now than 10 years ago when you started, I think it's increasingly hard to, I guess, start on YouTube to then build, because there's videos on every possible niche like under the sun now. So I guess it's good that you found that early on. I mean, I did, as I do with all my guests, I went back and watched your first video.
Oh boy,
that wonderful review of Victory of the Daleks, which I think you uploaded, if I got my dates right, one day after the broadcast initially. I think when I looked it up, it was like April of 2010.
It might have been, yeah. I had a really good period within my first year or two where I could get a review out within 2 or 3 days of the broadcast. Also because the reviews were a bit shorter back then.
Yeah.
But now there was a period where it would take 2 years for me to get a review out because life and everything gets in the way and all that stuff. But and back then, because I was one of the few people who was actually using edited footage and things like that, that was kind of my niche as well. And I knew that was my niche. I knew people wanted content that was more than just people in front of a camera talking. Of course, that's the thing now to do.
Yeah.
But back then it was that was just kind of what people wanted. And even in my own rudimentary Windows Movie Maker kind of way, that's what I was trying to deliver. And a lot of people have stuck around since then. Some people have moved on and come and gone, which is going to happen after 10 years.
Oh, yeah.
I've got a lot of, I think they call them legacy subscribers on YouTube, where they're not even active or they're there or they're even there anymore.
Yeah.
But, it is what it is. And I'm very grateful to those who have stuck with me all this time.
No, absolutely. I mean, as you said, just when scrolling back through all the videos you've done, as say you sort of started with Series 5, and then as the new ones were coming out, you were sort of doing them, but you were also looking at classic stories and doing all sorts, really. And I mean, one thing I wanted to ask you, I mean, having done it for so long, and I mean, I've done it for a long time myself, as you do, your Doctor Who is not your only interest, of course. You're interested in other things. And naturally, I think when you start YouTube, like we all do, we think, yeah, I'll do a video on this today, and just scrolling through, there's so many little different things you've done here and there, and I mean, for you, were you never sort of afraid of what happens if, as I'm sure a lot of people do, what happens if the audience doesn't like it, or what if YouTube buries it, stuff like that? Does it discourage you, or do you just sort of think, I'll just make it anyway?
When I started off, it didn't discourage me, because as far as I'm aware, 10 years ago, the YouTube algorithm wasn't as unforgiving as it is now. I could do a review of something, and sometimes that would get more views than the actual Doctor Who stuff.
Yeah.
Because you said you've recently been scrolling through the early days of my channel. I've actually unlisted and privated quite a few of the things. So I couldn't tell you off the top of my head, but it's just general admin and housekeeping, things that are phenomenally outdated, or opinions that I don't stand by anymore. So yeah, there's all this other stuff as well. But but now it is kind of a case of you talk about Doctor Who, and if you talk about anything else, it's not going to appear to your subscribers. It's not going to appear in it's YouTube kind of forces a bottleneck.
Yeah.
Sorry, my cat's just going a little bit insane.
That's
Everything
all right.
okay, Winnie? Everything all right? I think she's just chasing a tail.
Oh, bless her.
But yeah, so she's a little
right.
maniac.
Oh,
she's a little,
look at
that. Look, their tail is not normally that bushy. Something's really got her engaged. This is great radio.
all the audio listeners are going to be like, what is happening? So
you can just imagine the cat. We've given you the best of both worlds.
Absolutely.
Video can view it, and audio can imagine it. So, but now YouTube kind of bottlenecks your channel to talk about certain niches and stuff, which is its own issue as well. But it has kind of forced me to take talking about Doctor Who, quote unquote, more seriously.
Yeah.
I'm one of the premier Doctor Who scholars. But thankfully it's something that I still enjoy doing, and I still try and find different ways to make it interesting for myself. And because Doctor Who, obviously you have different franchises like Star Trek and Star Wars that are able to be so all-encompassing and are able to talk about anything and about anyone, that you don't really get bored talking about it, even after all these years. I think if I was talking about, I was Mr. A-Team reviews or whatever, I would run out of material really quickly. But with Doctor Who, you don't. Even when the TV show's not on, you've got your comics and your Big Finish and your novelizations and things like that.
Yeah.
So,
I think with all the Big Finish content alone, you could do that for the rest of your life if you wanted to, just with the sheer amount that they've put out now. It
is insane. Yeah.
No, absolutely. And I mean, again, in those last 10 years, would you say at any point there was I don't know what you call it, maybe a turning point for you as a creator, where like, you know, you look back at your sort of history online, I'm sure, as we all do. Was there a certain point where you feel it was a big shift for you, whether that was how you made content or just you as a reviewer, if that makes sense, any point like that?
Yeah, well, I remember it was during, in particular, series 8 and 9, when I kind of fell behind on doing the edited reviews because things like university and life and and work and everything got in the way. So I started doing like unscripted reactions. But it kind of felt more like an obligation at that time, and I was kind of like unmotivated because of things happening with that particular era creatively that I wasn't really on board with, which happens. Like, a lot of people are going through that now, like with Doctor Who, and that's like, I completely understand it. But then when series 11, when the show came back with series 11 and Jodie Whittaker and Chris Chibnall, that kind of like got me remotivated again. And series 10 as well. While I wasn't able to do any reactions at the time because I was just I couldn't do any reactions. Winnie, she says, meowing at me. This normally doesn't happen. The cats are a bit manic today. This normally does not happen, I promise. But yeah, for series 10, even when I couldn't do reactions and reviews, I was really on board with what it was going for. So that kind of like led me into series 11 and 12, which I've like been I don't think they're the best series, but creatively it's got me engaged and wanting to talk about it again. Yep. Series 11, yeah. She watches that.
Big Jodie fans, clearly.
Yeah. Winnie is a Jodie stan. She's got her own Twitter account, I imagine.
Oh,
and
great.
Post her ships. But because I'd also grown as a creator and kind of like matured and everything, because I started off as just a bit of an angry teenager on YouTube.
As we all do, usually.
Yeah. And we're all trying to like crib from the Nostalgia Critic and other angry reviewers and things that. And then it's kind of, thankfully, when I did take like that gap, I was able to kind of reassess what I'd been doing and just think, and working in the industry as well kind of mellowed me out. Like, not in a case of like, oh, these people are humans and they make it, like, I always knew that.
Yeah.
But it kind of just generally mellowed me out. And there's things that in the world that are worth getting angrier about, but it also allowed me to maybe look a bit more critically and in depth, but also a bit more fair, like not to take pot shots or anything, and think, and just to engage with the text on just a more interesting level.
Yeah, I think it's a testament to, I would say, like the best reviewers when they say, like, as you just said there, you mellow out over time, because I think, as you say, a lot of the time when we start out, you know, it is wanting to be angry because we take our cues from the angry video game nerd and the nostalgia critic, where that's like a character, but when it's like ourselves just doing it, and I mean, let's face it, there's a corner of the community who I won't mention by name, but I think whilst they, you know, say maybe don't like the current show, there are some of them where you see their content and you sort of think, how much of this anger is like embellished or put on for the sake of the algorithm or what the audience expect. It's like, it's very much in that same vein, whereas like I think with reviews like yours or other people I see where they're not necessarily shouting and raving at something they don't like, they're just going through it, criticizing it. You know, it's a more for me at least, it's a more engaging way of viewing things rather than someone saying this is bad, this is the extinction of the white male, and and things of that nature.
It's also, I think a lot of people go into it with like bad faith and negative intentions as well. Like with many people, you can tell, like no matter what this episode or movie or whatever did, you were gonna say exactly the same thing. Yeah. Like maybe it would be find and replace on a Word document where you replace different actors and directors and writers and stuff. But you went into this with your intentions, and you should just kind of be honest with that. Whereas I think like with my most recent review, Revolution of the Daleks, like that's not particularly angry, but it's like it's so close. Yeah, I can see that. I can see the pieces.
The light's there. It's there.
Yeah. It's because and that kind of makes me a bit frustrated, but it kind of is like I feel like I'm rooting for Ryan on his bike. Like, you're doing it, mate. You're nearly there. That's how I feel about that. And I think when you do mellow out, because when I started off, it was like all these hoity-toity critics are now talking about this art house stuff when I want to try to talk about the merits of blockbusters. But then when you grow up, it's like, oh no, you can have both. Yeah. And like you can, like, some of my favourite films at the moment are like just dramas with like no budgets and no action, and you can have, these two things can exist. It's not an us versus them as much as people want to try and make it. Yeah. But just when you grow up and you just get generally more life experience, like you go through the cringe-worthy phase, go through the angry phase by all means, as long as you're not hurting anyone. And then you just kind of, and that kind of adjusts and informs the person you become and you can learn from that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we'll talk more about, I think, as I call it, like the Twitter discourse, if you like. But I've noticed, like you say, I think the key thing is both can exist as long as basically we aren't nasty to each other. Like I always try, and I'm not trying to paint myself as the messiah, but I mean, I've made mistakes, if you like, on social media where I maybe have inadvertently, by accident, maybe insulted someone or made them feel, whatever. We've all probably done that at some point on our time on social media. What I try and do now is sort of say, okay, like you fundamentally disagree with me on, I don't know, Death in Heaven, for example. It's like, okay, that's what you think. This is what I think. They're fundamentally different, but I don't think any less of you for thinking that. I just don't agree with it. Like, obviously, in a perfect, rosy, shiny world, that's what it would be. But yes, there are some people who, in a way, I think on Twitter are like looking for a fight as well. They'll say things which are looking to provoke people, and then they'll try and spin it. It's just, but we'll get more into that later because, as you say, you're quite active on Twitter, and I'd love to get your thoughts and views on some of that. But in terms of mellowing out and changing opinions, I did watch one of your videos in particular right before we started recording, and that was your initial view on Hellbent.
Okay, so I've not watched it for years.
That's fair.
I tend not to watch back my older content, so I'll need the refresher course.
No, that's fair. I mean, like, I wasn't sure how, if you had watched it since or recently or whatever, but I did, keep in mind this is Will saying it in 2015, like 3 days after it's gone out. And yeah, I mean, that was going to be my question. Like, how do you think your thoughts on that have mellowed, or do you still feel sort of as you felt back then, or?
I think the actual opinion on the story is basically the same, but I would verbalize it and vocalize it in a very different way.
Yeah, because clearly at the time it really got under your skin, it seemed.
Yeah, it's also like, because I can just watch Hellbent as just an episode on iPlayer or on DVD or whatever, and it's just that. Whereas that kind of rant was the culmination of like 10 to 12 weeks of TV, one watching and reactions, and it was also just kind of because I loved the beginning of the Stephen Moffat era.
Yeah,
like I loved Series 5, I loved Series 6 Part 1, and I thought it was brilliant. And then from like Let's Kill Hitler onwards, it was just the same mistakes happening time and again, and it was just this whole creative vibe, for lack of a better term, that really didn't gel with me. And I loved Capaldi as well, and particularly after Heaven Sent, which is just such a phenomenal episode. And then it's like, I don't know why this is happening, and it's frustrating me. So that kind of like Hellbent rant was like the culmination of like 2.5 to 3 years in the making, in a sense. Like, I'm making it sound more grandiose than it actually was. But whereas now, like, kind of like what I've been doing with like Dalek and Cybercember, where I've been like talking about individual Dalek and Cybermen stories, like, I'm just watching them back to back to back in their own little bubbles, as opposed to the years-long gaps that happened between many of those stories and episodes. Yeah. So, I think that also makes me mellow out on the stories as well, somewhat. But yeah, the actual opinion on the story, I still don't like it. I still agree with the actual arguments themselves, but the way I would have got it across, I probably maybe did do some name calling in that video. I can't remember. If I did, probably shouldn't have done.
I don't think it was more like name calling. I think you were just, again, like you say, it was this culmination of, I guess, feelings on how the show was, and I think you just sort of like just let it out, basically. But I don't think there was any like name calling necessarily. No, not like that. But apart from the title saying Stephen Moffat, stop it. So,
yeah, well, that's not name calling.
No,
that's
not at all.
That's an instruction. But I remember like the Who Addicts did a very similar type of angry react. Like, I've not watched theirs for years as well, but I think that they've also kind of mellowed out somewhat as well. We've got like kind of similar creative trajectories, I think.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, like for like Dark Water and Death in Heaven, that Cybercember review, I know you really like the story as well, and I'm jealous that you do. I'm jealous that you like. That's kind of the extent of it. Like, maybe if you'd asked me if like 10 years ago, I would have been like, no, you're done for liking it, get out. But like, no, that's stupid to do. That's wrong to do.
Yeah.
But like, now I think I'm very confident in my convictions, because many people are able to say that they like or dislike something, but they're not able to pin down why.
Yeah.
And I like to think that I'm very good at explaining at least my reasonings. So if someone can come up to me and say, I watched your Dark Water Death in Heaven review, I disagree with everything you said, but I completely get you. Like, I think that's mission accomplished. Like, even, I think Davies, who you've had on the show before.
I have, yeah.
Yeah, he was like, I like the story, but I couldn't disagree with a single thing you said.
Yeah.
And it's your own personal threshold for what you like and appreciate that. And like, it's just general life experience and interacting with people. Like, I started my channel when I first was dating my now fiance, like 10 years ago, and she's definitely been a very good calming influence on me.
Yeah,
absolutely. Like when she sees me arguing on Twitter, she's like, "Well, cut it out."
Yeah,
I was like, oh, yeah, maybe, okay. It's good to have that outside influence as well.
Absolutely, someone who I guess isn't as embroiled in it as we are, just to say like, "Come on, this is a bit."
Yeah,
just calm down.
Yeah, she's not a big Doctor Who fan, but she might talk about it online if the online environment wasn't so toxic.
I mean, yeah. As I say, we'll get onto the Twitter things a bit later, and actually, some of the questions we've got from users on Twitter are actually about that whole, I guess, state of the fandom, if you like, or
fun.
So yeah, that'll be fun when we get into it. But sticking on your channel for the minute, you mentioned it briefly, but let's talk about Dalekcember and Cybercember. I won't retread too much ground because for anyone who doesn't know, Will did a fantastic interview on the Who Knew podcast, which is a fabulous podcast. Go and check that out on Spotify, Google, Apple, all the streaming apps. And I know you talked about it there and about how you have to do it so far in advance because of the, quite frankly, broken copyright system. But just briefly, for Dalekcember was the first one. Was it just like a flash in the pan idea you had, or was this something you'd wanted to do for a long time?
I think I was kind of drawing up plans for it the year before because I was like inspired by things like Cinemassacre's Monster Madness and Team 4 Stars. Like, cause I'm not a massive Dragon Ball Z fan, but it's something that I've like dipped my toe in and out. Like, they do Dragon Ball Z videos. They did like DBcember and things like that, where it's like daily videos. And I just thought, no one else in the community that I know of is doing anything like this. And around that time, there was kind of like a recurring joke, like wait 4 or 5 months for every Mr. TARDIS reviews video. And I was like, okay, so let's do 25 in-depth videos in 25 days. Like, I can't get a review out of Journey to the Centre of the TARDIS in 2 years, but I can go through 60 years of Dalek history in a month. But yeah, it was also just a good way, I think, to just like to stay on topic.
Yeah.
And to stay, I guess, to cover more ground in the series as well, because especially with the Daleks, you go through more or less the entire history of the show. It was like Dalek at the time. The last episode to open broadcast was Resolution. And the second story of the show in general was the Daleks. So I've covered almost the entire duration of the show. Yeah. But yeah, it was just fun to do as well. And also for stories like Victory of the Daleks, which is my first review, and then I did that for my 1 year anniversary. And then so I've reviewed that 3 times. So it's a thing. And then we're like Asylum of the Daleks, where like I think if you want to look at how I've like maybe changed and evolved creatively, go to my original Asylum of the Daleks review and then watch my Dalekcember one, where the arguments are still there, but I think they're a bit more refined, a bit more concentrated, and a bit more on topic. Like, because I spent a lot of time just doing some general nitpicking. So this is kind of like, I like to think, me demonstrating the type of approach that I want to take to the show. Yeah. And with Cybercember as well. Like, I'm really proud of Cybercember because that was also a great collaborative thing as well. Like, I got Davies on board as well. I was able to interview with the closing time director Steve Hughes, bring on board like Batman matches, Matthew Toffolo as the 8th Doctor, and have like a little voice cast for the Flood comic strip. It was just like, what can I do with this format? And it was really fun to do.
Yeah, and I think that's one great thing I found, be it like joining in or like trying to be involved with the WhoTube community, if you like, how collaborative everyone is to sort of jump on projects and help each other out. And with Cybercember, which was this past year, which again, if anyone hasn't watched Dalek or Cybercember, go and do that because they're brilliant. So as soon as like you wrapped up Dalekcember, was it an instant, oh yeah, I'll do Cybercember next year, or was it something you debated for a while?
Yeah. It was a case of like, do I do Mastercember or Cybercember? And because there's so much crossover with those stories as well, how do I do this? Yeah. But then when the world ended back in April, March time, it was a case of like, okay, I'll start planning it, see if I can make it work. And thankfully I was able to be in a job during like between July and October where I was able to actually do Cybercember at the same time. So once I realised I had that job in the bag, I was like, yep, let's make this work, let's make this happen. Yeah. And I had to make it like 2 months in advance. So all the videos that you saw in December, they were done by October. So it was kind of interesting sitting on this 10-hour saga just waiting for it to finally be released into the world. And it was so gratifying to see it be received so well as well. It's people have really enjoyed and appreciated it, and I've appreciated that response.
Yeah, you've got so much more patience than me. If I had 25 videos just sitting there 2 months in advance, the temptation just to be like, oh, I'll put this one out, like, no. But I guess, as you say, like, a lot of the time you are fighting against the YouTube system, if you like. And I mean, it hasn't, well, I'd argue it hasn't changed for the better necessarily in the past 10 years. If anything, it's gotten worse. As Doctor Who is like the main focus of your channel, again, I guess sort of like we talked about the algorithm bottlenecking you into doing one certain thing. When you get those copyright claims, now even though now you're expecting them, you're preparing in advance for them, does it sort of make you think, oh, like, is it really worth, does it make you think, is it really worth the time and hassle, or are you just sort of numb to it now?
I'm definitely numb to it now. Like, I won't name the WhoTuber just in case they don't want to be named, but a quite prominent Doctor Who YouTuber got in touch with me recently and was like, how do you deal with all these copyright claims? So I literally just gave him a copied and pasted script that I've been sending for the past like 7 or 8 years. And he came across like a little bit nervous because he obviously didn't want to lose his channel, and I didn't want that to happen to him because of advice I gave him. But yeah, and so it became a case of like I'm very numb to it, but for some other people they might find it very intimidating. But yeah, it doesn't really affect the content that I make. Like I try and let's say I'm doing a review of Resolution of the Daleks. I know that Resolution of the Daleks, the footage is going to be claimed, and we're going to have to like wait for some time for it to be released. But I want to make sure that the stuff around it also doesn't get claimed. So I do shorter clips from different episodes and condense and like keep my references to other things really sparse. So it affects my approach a little bit. But creatively, it's just I now just have to plan 2 months in advance if I want a proper project. Which I've got I've got scripts written for my next big project now coming up, like maybe during the summer. Yeah. But it's just a case of writing it and making it now, and then just waiting 2 months. Yeah. So, but as someone who like makes and works on short films and other creative projects outside of YouTube, it's a similar thing where you wait months for a script to make it through pre-production, or you wait weeks and months for something to get through the editing process until it's out the other end. So for me, it's just a natural part of the routine, but I understand for other people it might be intimidating. But it's mainly just, it's not so much YouTube's system, it's more just like the BBC saying, no matter what footage you use, we're just going to let the clock run down, even though we know we're not going to win.
Yeah.
So it's frustrating, but...
No, it is, and I know a lot of big companies, I mean, in the past have been called out for it. I think the one in the last few years was, I think it was Universal, Universal Music, for basically copyrighting any song in the world, even though they didn't own the rights. And it's just like, I think it's a blatant abuse of power, really, by those. And I mean, I don't think it's changed. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't it when you file a claim, the power essentially of the decision lies with the person who's coming after you? There's no middle man to determine it. It's you're sending, here's why I'm appealing, but it's ultimately up to them. So they could, as you say, run the clock down, build up the ad revenue, and then say, yeah, do you know what? We are going to go through with it, even though it's not legal or correct or whatever it is. It's just it's awkward because some companies are really good. Like I had a review where some of the music of it was claimed, and Doctor Who footage was claimed as well. But within 2 days, the music was released. They were like, yes, it's fine, fair use, that's all good. But it was the BBC who was the awkward party in this case. Right. But you get these systems, like if you know Jim Sterling, who does video game content and stuff, he came up with something called the copyright deadlock, where because he wanted his show to be advertisement free because he's funded via Patreon, and what he did was that he would use footage from different companies so that they'd all get claimed, but because you've got these different companies competing with each other, the ad revenue goes nowhere. In a sense, to circumvent copyright claims, he put in more copyrighted content. Which kind of shows how demonstrably broken the system is. Yeah. But it's also like, because I know it's better for me to do the claim, get it out the way after 2 months, then have a video go live for a couple of months, and then it's manually claimed, because once it's claimed once, it can't be claimed again. Absolutely, so it's better to just get it out the way first. So in turn, that makes me more lax with the footage, so I put in more copyrighted stuff that is going to be claimed, rather than try and work around it. Yeah. So it's a system that actually encourages you
to use more copyrighted content, even if it is in a fair use capacity.
It's just an extremely awkward backwards system once you look at it in its purest form, isn't it?
And it's not getting much better.
No.
But thankfully, like, my Cybercember stuff was able to... All 25 videos went through an appeal process. All 25 of them got through.
Oh, good.
Good. It was absolutely no issue at all. It was just a 2-month wait.
Yeah, which is I guess the summit, as you know now, going into it. And I think you mentioned this I think it was either in the Who Knew podcast or in your State of the Channel address that you did recently at the time of recording. You're not. There's no plans for a third December this year, or
no. At the time of saying this, recording this now, there isn't. I want to try and do more content like it, but in terms of an actual review marathon in December, I think that's kind of off the books now.
Yeah.
But I still want to try and do something for December.
Yeah.
I don't know quite what it would be. It could be like just a 25-day countdown, or just here's 25 hot takes in 25 days. I don't know. I'm welcome to suggestions, but I currently don't have any plans. But I don't need to until like June or July.
Yeah, but, and I think I guess some people, I mean, because I've done daily uploads in December as well, and I think sometimes it makes you think, oh, do people realise sort of how much work has to go into getting each one? They think, oh, he's doing it every day. This must be quite easy for him because he's going bang, 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 bang. And then you think, well, no. Like, say you've got the 2-month gap, you're doing like in-depth reviews that are like 15 minutes plus. It's a lot of effort. So I hold nothing against you for not doing it in that same vein.
Yeah, because Cybercember as well, while I love doing it, and I found it more creatively fulfilling than Dalekcember. Not to say I didn't with that one, but because the collaborative effort and getting more people and the in-depth reviews. And I think the Cybermen stories are way more varied than the Dalek ones, even though I think the Dalek ones are typically better. Yeah. But I was a little bit burnt out by Cybercember as well, because the reviews were longer, significantly longer in some cases, and there was so much more to organise. But I was also working on the Collateral of Ivanhoe audio drama at the same time.
Absolutely.
And it did burn me out a little bit, so I want to try and avoid that burnout, which is why if I try and do another marathon series, it won't be as big, and it won't be it won't be daily uploads. It might be something a bit more segmented and scattered.
Yeah.
But that's the content people really gravitated towards, and I loved making it, and that's kind of what I want to do going forward.
It's sort of the perfect alignment, isn't it? When it's something you really enjoy, particularly making, and then people respond to it. That's the best you can hope for these days on YouTube, isn't it? But
yeah.
As you said just then, you have done a Doctor Who audio drama as of recent, The Collateral of Ivanhoe, which again, for folks listening, watching, if you haven't heard it, go to Will's channel and check it out. I loved it. It was a brilliant 13th Doctor story.
Yes, thank you so much.
And so what? Again, sort of, I guess the sparking idea, was it just, I could do an audio drama, or was this something you'd had in the making for quite a while?
Yeah, so the plan was I joined like a Facebook group where we'd just be writing and encouraging each other, writing some fan fiction. So, and because I don't write prose, I don't write like conventional, like say novels or anything like that. I was gonna make a screenplay because that's kind of my wheelhouse. But the plan originally was just to write the screenplay, and that would be it. It would just exist as a document I could upload for people to read. But then, like I said, when the world ended last year and people had more free time and people maybe wanted that escapist entertainment or something to preoccupy their time, particularly actors who during lockdown were out of work, I thought, let's turn this into an audio project, into something, into something that can keep people occupied but also entertain the audience as well. So that was the creative impetus for that one, and I liked the idea of just a Doctor Who bank robbery. Yeah, that was the kind of inciting spark for that story. But it's also like, what happens if you put the Doctor in a bank robbery situation, but also kind of talk about the value, when you rob a bank, who's really getting hurt? Yeah, and it was sort of like that moral question, which I think, like, you have your standard stick 'em up tropes and things, but when you explore deeper with the characters and the lore of Doctor Who, you can actually maybe say something about, like, just through the lens of sci-fi.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it was a great fun audio tale, because I think some people I know I've chatted with, they say, how do you get into, like, the Big Finish stuff? Because I really struggle to sort of, I guess, imagine what I'm hearing. And I mean, it's different for different people, isn't it? Because I know for me, I could be editing or doing something whilst listening and still be extremely engaged, whereas some people just have to literally sit there and do nothing else. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I guess with that in mind, as you were crafting it, as you're recording it, putting it together, was there that sort of thing of like trying to make sure what was being said on the page was being, I guess, visually represented, if that makes sense? Like when you're listening to it, could you see the circumstances?
Yeah, I get you. It was because it was a screenplay first and foremost. I knew that when you write for audio drama, it's a slightly different language. You need to take a different tact with it. Like in an audio drama, you could be like, "Oh, what's over there? Oh, it's this blinding light, and now it's becoming a 12-foot tall giant," or something. Like you kind of have to verbalize it, which is a bit of a compromise for some people, but like a necessary one as well. But for this, because I knew it would be a screenplay, I knew I would have the narration, but I don't want to be reaming off like paragraphs and paragraphs of text. It still needs to be a bit punchy. Like you need to have the pace that if you were watching it. But I know I've got a few people who don't listen to Big Finish, but liked listening to The Collateral of Ivanhoe because of that middle ground approach, where it was a full cast audio drama, but it did have the interlinking narration and the scene descriptions to help to keep the pace up as well.
Yeah, sort of like a halfway house of the two worlds, if you like. But
yeah, there was actually a Torchwood audio drama I was listening to the other day. It was the very first one called The Conspiracy. I forget who wrote it, but yeah, it's basically Captain Jack Harkness narrating a story that he's been involved with, and he will have like interlinking narration. So that was actually a really good approach for that story to take as well.
Yeah. Absolutely, and after the success of it, because I'd say a lot of people from what I've seen on the socials, on YouTube, have reacted to it so positively, has that sort of spurred you on to think, I want to make more of these?
Yeah, well, if I hadn't have done that, I never would have done the adaptations of the Flood comic for Cybercember.
Yeah.
So that kind of like lit a little spark with me for that one. But I'd love to do another one. I've got a few story ideas in mind, especially now with Revolution of the Daleks. I kind of know what the TARDIS team was going to be.
Yeah.
Like I was kind of waiting just in case the special ended with the Doctor, Yaz's sister, and Captain Jack as part of the TARDIS team. That would have scuppered many plans.
Yeah.
But now I know that we've got 13 and Yaz. There could be a gap between that and Series 13. We don't know when John Bishop, who's playing Dan, is going to join along. But yeah, I've got a few story ideas, and just trying to workshop a couple of concepts. It's not guaranteed, but I would like to do another one.
Yeah.
And I know that Wendy, who played the 13th Doctor, who was like superb.
Oh, absolutely, fantastic.
Like, not just like a gifted impressionist, but a genuinely good performer in her own right as well. She is on board to do another one, and I'd be up for doing another one.
Well, hopefully, everyone, fingers crossed, maybe there'll be another one coming. And you mentioned like the new TARDIS team, of course. What were your What's your thoughts on John Bishop's casting then? Because I think everyone's sort of got their own take on it, and I'd just be curious to hear. You might have put it on Twitter, and I probably have seen it at some point. But for anyone watching, listening who hasn't, what do you think about the new companion announcement?
Yes, I'm all for it really. I think because I know people have been a bit skeptical about the casting a comedian, but we've done this dance. We've done this dance for long enough to know. Like I remember, like I even did a video. I think it was with the 5 Who fans crossover, like when Nardole was announced as a Series 10 companion, and I was like, yeah, they have no idea what the audience wants. This is not right. And I ate my words, and I'm so happy that I did as well. Like I like being proven wrong. With stuff like that, and we had like Catherine Tate, we had Bradley Walsh, who, like, I only knew him as the host of The Chase.
I think a lot of people did, yeah.
Yeah, and he turns out to be one of the even people who dislike the current era. I like Bradley Walsh.
Yeah,
like, it's kind of a universal consensus for the most part.
Yeah,
So we've done this dance long enough to give him the benefit of the doubt. And I like John Bishop's stand-up. I've watched quite a few of his clips over the past couple of weeks. Really funny guy, very thick accents. I think.
Oh,
in America,
I love it.
There'll have to be subtitles in America. I think. But yeah. I have no idea what his dramatic capabilities are. He's done like a Ken Loach film, and Ken Loach has done a great job at casting comedians to be in this. Who plays Daniel Blake in Daniel Blake?
Oh God, I knew you were going to ask that, and it's escaping me. Yeah,
Dave Johns.
Yes,
who is predominantly a comedian, and that is a to quote a phrase, a tour de force.
Yeah, it's a brilliant movie. Brilliant.
Yeah, it's a brilliant movie. Great human performance. So, like, if Ken Loach spots as a great actor, that's a great seal of approval. But yeah, I was a little bit, I wouldn't say disappointed, because you build your own hype for it, but like an all-female TARDIS team, which would have been fun, particularly after, I think, as much as I respect Tosin Cole and Bradley Walsh as performers and the characters, I do think the size of that TARDIS team kind of detracted from the stories and the 13th Doctor in particular.
Yeah.
So I was kind of hoping for a smaller team.
Yeah.
But it's all execution dependent. But
yeah.
I like the idea of the rumours circulating that he'll join halfway through the series.
I saw this, like episode 4, are they saying? They think from the production shoots or whatever.
Yeah, because they had a slate which said like 4 scene 3 or something.
Right.
But like if that's not set in stone. That could just be maybe the DOP or the camera assistant has a particular system. But if that is the case that he joins halfway through, that could be interesting. But either way, like John Bishop as a Liverpudlian like man with a van by the looks of it. Yeah, like I think I was saying this to someone the other day. I think if we have an issue where he's just going to get Bradley Walsh's lines, where like if like Dan is saying, "Oh, I'm a cancer survivor and I've got a son called Martyn Minclair," like if we have that, that's an issue.
Yeah.
But if he's his own distinct character, if we have maybe Yaz being the person in authority who's able to show him the ropes, that could reflect well on her. Yeah, I'm interested in where it's going, and I think that casting reveal was really well done.
Yeah.
And like, even my dad texted me, who doesn't watch Doctor Who. He was like, didn't expect that, because he watched the New Year special and he enjoyed it. And he was like, I wasn't expecting that casting, but okay, he's on board for it.
I'm just so happy that hopefully it seems, I know they're filming it in Cardiff, but I'm so happy that Liverpool is getting some representation, because having lived there for 6 years, I went there for uni and just sort of stayed there until the world ended. But it's such a gorgeous city, and like the culture's so rich, and the people are so... Scousers, sadly, I mean, a lot of the times by the media, being honest, like they get still this bad rap of like, oh, they're a bunch of like no good people, like almost borderline, savage people. They're treated as like lesser people, and like having lived there, they're the complete opposite. Some of the friendliest people you could meet. So I just hope they get some good representation in the show.
Yeah. Because like, I live like within a decent driving distance of Liverpool. I filmed there on some projects before. It's a beautiful city, great people.
Yeah.
But what you were saying about their reputation, the best thing about Liverpudlians is that they won't stand for it.
Oh, like, absolutely.
There's a reason the Sun newspaper is banned in Liverpool.
Yeah, thank God.
And like I respect the hell out of that.
Absolutely.
Like, like Dan, the character, doesn't necessarily need to have that fire. But like, yeah, it's great just to have some, like, because when people talk about like diversity quotas and stuff like that, it's not just gender and racial. It's like demographic, it's geographical, it's class, it's like religion, it's so many other factors. Like, even I was arguing with someone about this on Twitter the other day, or the other week, like Bradley Walsh is technically a diversity hire because he's over 50.
Yeah, he's an older man.
And he's like the white guy who's meant to placate the diversity hire stuff, if you believe that. But yeah, he's the older guy. This character's a cancer survivor, which is like a pre-existing medical condition, which is technically a diversity aspect. It's a huge encompassing issue. And like Liverpool is a great thing. Like Sheffield as well.
Yeah,
I wish that they spent maybe a bit more time in like the setting. And like we never really explore it outside of Yaz's flat and that establishing shot that they use for like 5 episodes, but it's still a cool approach. Like, the companions are from Sheffield instead of from London, and I think that can add something.
Yeah, I was so happy when they said, I mean, I'm from Doncaster, which is like the next town over, but it's still all South Yorkshire, and like seeing Sheffield and hearing Sheffield voices and like seeing locations that I know, and the dialects I hear, it's like I can't remember the last time. I don't watch as much telly as I used to, but I can't remember like a drama that I watched that had a predominantly like, particularly South Yorkshire. I know a lot of people bundle the North as like, oh, that's Yorkshire. It's like, no, there's several different regions. But yeah, just hearing like, I can't remember the exact line, but Jodie said something like, oh, spaceships in South Yorkshire or something like that. And when she said it, I was like, yes, we're in South Yorkshire, baby. But yeah, no, I'm excited to see what John Bishop brings to it. Because I think the last time, I'm trying to think of like a Scouse voice in Doctor Who, if you count Dodo in the 60s, but then they stomped that out of her within like one episode, and then
they couldn't even let her have that. They couldn't even let the show have that.
And then you had Pauline Collins in the Faceless Ones, who kind of had like a Scouse accent, if memory serves. I think she was billed as like Northwest, but it was sort of a mix of like Liverpool, Manchester. But I mean, in the new series, unless you can point it out, I can't think of like a Scouse voice we've had.
Yeah,
unless I'm missing one.
Accents are not remotely like I've got a terrible ear for accents. So like when people would complain about Dawes and Cole's accent, I'm not hearing it because that's just me.
Yeah.
But even if it's not the accent, it's just like it feels like so much of TV and media is like London, or they go to a cabin in the woods in Scotland and get murdered by people with axes or something. Like, that's really the two extremes. And I guess I love the idea of like the whole mundane like aliens in like they do get aliens in Sheffield. But like even this was a kind of precedent in Chris Chibnall's work before he became showrunner. Like that great shot in The Power of Three where Rory's dad is having a picnic in the TARDIS.
Yeah.
Like I love that. I think that's a great distillation of what Doctor Who is. So I just love the idea that an alien invasion is happening in Sheffield or things like that. Or maybe there's I don't know if it's going to be set in Liverpool, but the recurring monsters, just in case people are avoiding spoilers, the recurring monsters that are going to be in Series 13, them in Liverpool, that'd be cool.
That'd be so cool.
It adds a nice flavour to it.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And I mean, all I can say is at the time of recording, obviously Series 13 is not out, so I'm keeping my fingers firmly crossed that we see some different representation outside of London. And the thing you mentioned about Tosin's accent is interesting because, I mean, it wasn't all the way through. For me, at least, they were just, growing up around that accent. It was just certain words and syllables I found that were just a bit like, that's not complete. But I think, again, having been fortunate enough to go to drama school, you spend a lot of time on accents and like breaking down the sounds. It's very methodical and intricate, and it's not easy if it's not your native accent. I'm not saying he had an easy job, because the worst thing he could have done was like do the stereotypical, I'm from up north, I sound like this. So yeah.
Have you seen it's going viral on Twitter and TikTok and everything, but like the every northern character in a musical video?
Yes, I've seen it.
Yeah. It's funny because it's true.
Yeah,
that's just the stereotype.
Sadly, yeah. So when I heard like Mandips, I thought was pretty spot on. But when I heard both of them, I was like, I'm hearing realistic interpretations of what I grew up around, and it was nice to watch a drama where they go to the north and everyone don't talk like this and go down the pub and get your some people do talk like that, but I think it's such a outdated.
Doctor, we found monsters into mine.
Exactly. We'll go down pit, we'll fight monsters. It's just I mean I think it's also telling of who I guess who's in charge of like TV and film now, because obviously they have a lot of dissenting voice, which segues very nicely. Oh, see how smooth that was. Very nicely into
very professional.
Absolutely. Oh, you can tell I've done this before. But it segues nicely. I did want to talk about you in TV and film, because as you've said in videos, in interviews, you do work within the TV and film world. So how did you get into that?
Yeah, so I was originally wanting to like get into acting and getting into drama and stuff at university. And then midway through my final year, we did a big collaborative project where the drama department and the sound and the film department and all these other creative fields would collaborate together to do a big project. But I forget if it was like the video like camera department where either just they didn't turn up and do anything, or for whatever reason there was an oversight and we just never got assigned anyone. Okay. So I kind of took over with that bit, and that was kind of where I got the itch to like work in media more like behind the scenes and like in that visual format. So yeah, I did a master's in fiction film production at Salford at Manchester, and that was where I got my start. I got my first couple of credits just after leaving university on a couple of TV shows. Like my first big credit was on Flog It, where like they put in a local magazine that they were going to be coming to this area to, and you email them to ask for your items to be evaluated to go to auction, for those who haven't seen the show. And I just emailed that one saying, I actually don't have an item, but do you need some like local crew? And they were like, yeah, come on board. So that was how I kind of tricked my way into that one. And because I actually had a credit from like a BBC like big show, I was able to go from that onto other things. And the first few credits are always the hardest because like, you're an unproven commodity. But then, like, as you start doing more and you accumulate, it does kind of snowball. Like, I was very thankful when I first moved to Manchester. I was able to, for the first couple of years, to go from job to job to job relatively uninterrupted. And I'm clearly doing something right because it's still what I'm currently doing. I say currently, like, we're still kind of locked down and it's slim pickings.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's how I started out.
No, that again, it's fantastic you've been able to jump from job to job to job in a way in like the early years of doing it, because I mean, I think in any department of the industry, whether it's, you know, acting or behind the scenes or art design, whatever, you know, it's not easy, because I think the simple fact is, and I mentioned this in a podcast a few weeks ago with Sophie Cowdery, who did the Blu-ray Steelbook covers amongst others, but you know, she said something quite poignant, being I think in a lot of the creative spaces, there's not enough jobs for the amount of people who are skilled and qualified to do it, is the simple answer, which is a shame, because then it obviously fosters this whole idea of you've got to try and prove yourself to be better than each other, which, you know, some people are fine with that. It's a bit like it, you know, bits and pieces, I think. But yeah, no, I'm glad you've been able to do it. Is there a project you've done so far that's been like a key favourite?
One of my early ones, I was able to work on Peter Kay's Car Share. That was like one
nice.
of my first big jobs coming out of like when I moved to Manchester. Like, because he was a bit like, his DVDs and stand up was in constant rotation in our household. So that was like, yeah, I really appreciated and enjoyed that one. But yeah, since then, like, it's, yeah, because like big variety of things, working on like children's TV as like an AD. Working on like things like Eurovision, like working on the floor, like herding audience. Yeah, I was working on the Late Late Show with James Corden when it came to London. Nearly got backhanded by Kate Blanchett as she was talking. She was talking to someone in a corridor and was like doing like big hand movements, and I'm walking past her, and she like nearly backhands me, and she was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry, darling." And I was like, nearly got slapped by Kate Blanchett.
That'd been a claim to fame, wouldn't it? You know,
I'm going to continue never washing this cheek again, as from Futurama. Yeah, so yeah, those have been some highlights, and like working with like it. There was something on Twitter the other day, someone saying like, who's the best and worst person you've worked with? And while like I won't name like the bad people,
sure,
but like some of the good ones really surprised me. Like Russell Brand was lovely.
Oh yeah,
I didn't expect that. Like, he remembered my name like over the course of several days, which like sounds like bare minimum stuff, but like, you know, I barely.
Some people don't though, do they? Some people just don't go that extra mile.
No, he was great, and I helped him to pick out some trousers and stuff like that. So that's always fun. Like James Nesbitt was lovely as well. So it's a fun industry, and like it's stressful because you don't know where sometimes the next job is going to be. Yeah. But it also means that each job is completely different, and there's a great sense of like communal like spirit where you're working towards a common goal. And even though a job is finite because it has to finish at some point, there's a great arc to it. It's like you're counting down how many shots you've got left to do, how many episodes you've left to film. Yeah. It's a really satisfying industry to be a part of, even if it is like stressful. And what you said with Sophie, like, she's absolutely right. It's an industry where there's so much demand for crew and for staff, but there's not, with budgets getting slashed all the time. Like, there's not enough to like hire people. Which is quite disheartening as well. It's a very cutthroat industry at times. Like, when I went to uni, there's only, I think I might actually be the only one left who's still actively working in the industry.
Oh really?
Out of my group, I think maybe there's one other person who like dips in and out. Yeah. But yeah, it's the nature of the industry, but it's also I wish that it took steps to be more just inclusive to people who, like, especially who live in rural areas. Like, I know BBC have branches in like Humberside and Lincolnshire and places like that, but I think that there's so many stories to be told from those areas and those regions, and those voices should be the ones to tell those stories. But because they don't live in London or they don't have a particular postcode, it's very, very difficult to get the voices heard with that.
No, absolutely, and you're absolutely right about the industry hopefully getting more inclusive, because I mean, whilst I'm very grateful and thankful that you've still been able to, you know, do bits and pieces throughout all the madness of the last year, like I mean, for the theatre industry, I mean, it's basically been left to die, quite frankly. And I know, like, you can't have full houses. I get that, you know, it's not safe and etc. But I mean, you know, that you've seen the amount of like multiple proposals people have thought up and come forward with. Here's how we can do it, and they just get told no, like for seemingly no real good reason. But
it's because I remember at the beginning of lockdowns and stuff, I did a live stream of like, if you're in the media industry, this is what you can do. This is hopefully what's going to be coming over the next few months to help those people who are going to be out of work. And poor naive me, like that support didn't come. Like we're going on 10 months, and like nearly 3 million people, 1 million of those people in the creative fields, have not had a wage for like approaching a year, and we don't have aside from cars, like the arts and media are the UK's biggest export. Like it doesn't even make business sense to neglect it.
No,
even if it didn't make business sense, you still shouldn't. But it doesn't make any sort of sense. Like, and for theatres and everything in particular, like my heart goes out to all of those who are in these precarious situations through just really no fault of their own, because of terrible management from up top. Yeah, and just a sense that a whole industry has been forgotten about, which is very disheartening. And what's going to happen? It was already happening, but it'll be people who could afford to stay at home or live with their parents, or afford to not always be working, who could maybe take a month or two off while they find the next creative job. Yeah. It's now going to be a case of, if you can afford to not work, you're going to have the job at the end of it. But not everyone's in that scenario. It is going to further. Sorry to be. I think no. But it is going to further a class divide between who is working in the industry, and that's the last thing the industry needs right now.
No, absolutely, and don't apologise. Like I say this on the show sometimes, when, as again, the nature of it is we can go anywhere with the conversation, but sometimes when it takes things like this, I do think need to be addressed from time to time, especially with, you know, the two of us. We have a platform in which to do so. I think it's good to do it, because again, I think sometimes people, I'm not saying everyone, but I've spoken to people who say, oh well, you know, you could always just do something else, and it's like, it's like, okay, it's like, yes, like inherently, like creatives do a lot of side jobs anyway, like I did before all this happened. But I mean, I think unless you've dipped your toes in it or really looked into it, you can't fully comprehend what these people, you know, are having to go through at the minute, quite frankly.
And it's also like, you could get a normal job during this time, but like, of course, everyone's looking at this time, so it's a very competitive market for every job at the moment. But it's all like, once you are in a short-term contract with another company, you're not able to like do that interview for the next creative thing, or for the next TV or theatre, because you're now, it becomes a cycle that is very difficult to break out of. So it's going to be a case of people who are able to afford to not do that in between work, who are going to be in the best place to take on those jobs when they do come up. Like we said, it's a cycle, and it doesn't help anyone.
No, it's vicious. But to close off on this subject, though, if anyone out there who was listening or watching is maybe either dipping their toes or thinking about working behind the scenes as you do, have you got any sort of words of advice or words of wisdom that you'd want to share?
Yes, because my advice was generally for like pre-apocalypse, and like and everything.
Let's say it's post-apocalypse, like everything's back to normal.
So we're now in our Mad Max dystopian hellscape. But the worst part's over. But it will be a case of like, if you are a student, use the extracurricular is the name of the game. Like, use all of the facilities or the equipment that you can rent and everything to make whatever projects you want to. But also, if you are like going to be writing a screenplay or a book or anything, you're not obligated to show it to anyone. So just like experiment and have fun with it, you're not obligated to make a film and then show it to people. Maybe just make the film just to learn doing it. Like, if you are able to show it to people, great. If you can put it on YouTube, or even like have a little private screening with your family and friends and stuff, that's great. But you're not obligated to do that, so you can make those mistakes in private, behind closed doors. You can mess up and go wrong, and you learn from that, and you build upon it. And also, I don't know what the state is going to be like after the apocalypse, but like, one great way to get into the industry is to work at local TV. Like, many regions do have a local TV station that are looking for minimal paid staff and a lot of volunteers. So if you've got the time to do it, then I send them an email, find out what your nearest local TV branch is, and tell them what you've got to offer, or if you can shadow and things like the worst they can do is say no.
Yeah.
Like they could ignore you, but they're not going to send in the hounds. Like you can email them and they'll say no. They're not going to hold it against you. Like there is like a thing as a blacklist in the industry, but that blacklist is only for like people who lie on their CV or terrible people and stuff. So yeah, but like you're not going to be told off for asking.
Yeah.
And even you could just be one email in like a pile of 100, but it could be luck as well, or if you know someone who knows someone, which is not a great way to morally to get in, but it's a way, and then change it from the inside.
Yeah, work from the inside, but
exactly, yeah.
And also, don't lie on your CVs, kids. Don't do that. Don't be that actor who's like, oh, can you ride a horse? Yeah, of course I can. I think I'm
Yeah, like that was a lesson I learned early on. Thankfully, not for me. The biggest CV mistake I made was misspelling BBC on my CV.
No,
I still got the job. Got the job.
What did you put instead?
I think it was either I think it was BCC. I don't know, but either I got the job.
You got the job. That's all right. Easy.
So either I impressed them in other ways, or the talent pool was particularly barren. But for that one, it was like a couple of days left before the shoot overran, and the third assistant director had to go up north at the end of the job to. I think they'd filmed a Johnny Vegas thing up north, so we had to get in a new third AD. And this person like lied on their CV saying that they'd done all this stuff. So when they turn up on set, and they smelt it from a mile away, because the first thing that person did. He turns up to location, hasn't met anyone. The first thing he did was went to the catering van.
Oh no!
Like no, you introduce yourself to the team, so they know who you are. So they sniffed it from a mile away, and I was literally shadowing this guy, telling him how to do the job, and things like that, and kind of guiding him through it, which I'm sure was good for him, but it wasn't good for the shoot.
Yeah.
And then that guy has got a big black tick next to his name whenever he sends emails to that particular company. Yeah.
Well, there you go, guys. Don't lie, basically. Just be truthful when you apply.
You can embellish things but you don't outright say that I can do this job when you don't know what to do.
Absolutely. And with that, we'll move into some questions from Twitter, I think. And funnily enough, the first one still ties into your career in TV, and it's from Philip Hawkins, friend of the show. Hello, Philip.
Yeah.
Who says, "Has your TV career taken you into jobs you didn't expect when you first started out?"
Because I woke up and saw this question this morning, and I've had many hours to think about it, and I wish I had a good answer. But it's kind of been I don't want to say uneventful, but it is a case of I think the more I think about it, I do have just really fun and crazy stories. But it's a case of I didn't expect that one of my jobs would take me into the Welsh countryside, and we've got a sheep wrangler, and basically I'm told by the wrangler that if the sheep runs in your direction, try and tackle it to the ground, and stuff like that. And I'm not trained to do this, but okay. Or when I've been made to walk a goat around a set, and goats smell of goat's cheese, and I didn't know what else I was expecting them to smell like. It's such a fun industry. It's a difficult and stressful one in that, but yeah, I think one thing that I've learned from the industry though is I remember there was the controversy, the whole chaos in Cardiff and stuff. There's drama on set, and it's there's drama on every set.
There's always something going on.
Obviously not every drama is gonna end with the producers swearing and fleeing the set to go to fleeing the country or anything. But people are gonna argue, tensions are gonna rise. You've got big personalities working in close proximity with each other. You're going to have drama on every set. It's fun. It humanises everybody to an extent.
Yeah.
Obviously, some people can take it too far. But it's a fun and unexpected career. One thing I've yet to do is work abroad. I've not done that before. I've had a few opportunities where I've nearly had to. But it's fun. And there'll just be the odd random thing where I'll have to... we were working with someone who brought their cat with them.
Oh, nice.
But it wasn't in a whole diva, my cat must come with me at all times. It was for the show.
Oh, right, okay.
But then I had to drive the cat home. So there's just me with this cat in the car.
What a great
and I'm
job.
driving. Yeah, and I'm driving them like 5 hours to their home to drop them off to the house, and I drop it off to the person's partner. They barely even look at me or talk to me. They're just there to greet the cat, and I guess I'm just driving back now. Random things like that. Oh, why do all my stories revolve around animals? One of my recent jobs, I had to walk 2 bulldogs. Okay. I've never walked dogs before. I'm a cat person, but they were like, "Well, you know animals. You can walk dogs every day for this job." Okay, yeah. Not all of my stories revolve around animals, but for some reason
there's a running theme. Yes.
Basically, I'm the Dr. Dolittle of the media industry.
There you go. Need an animal handler, Will's your man. So
but what's great though is that when people say like, "Oh, get a real job," it's like I have done such a massive variety of things and worked in so many multifaceted, multi-skilled jobs. That do you really want me to compete against in the job market? That sounds like a massive embellishment, but it's like I'd rather be working in this industry. It's crazy and insane and fun, and no 2 days are the same.
There you go. Yeah, that's a good incentive, if any.
Yeah, expect the unexpected. It's stressful, but it's very fun and rewarding.
Hell yeah! We got Time Lord Master 108 who says, "What are your thoughts on the Sarah Jane adventures?" They decided to ask this since it's the only spin-off you haven't talked about, apparently.
Yes, that's true. I think I've talked about because it was 2011, was it, when Elizabeth Sladen unfortunately passed away?
Yeah.
So yeah, it was very early days for my channel. But I've not actually done a review or reaction or anything of Sarah Jane Adventures. I've not, apart from the stories where David Tennant and Matt Smith feature, I don't think I've rewatched any of them since broadcast.
Okay.
So from what I recall, I'd like to get the box set and actually properly watch them. But from what I recall, it's a really solid family children's show, and I don't think it because it is working with that demographic. You're not going to get a Waters of Mars type adventure. That's not to say it's dumbed down or anything. You would get some hard hitting mature stories with really potent themes. I think Mask of the Berserker is the consensus to be one of the best episodes of the series, and that's Clyde's relationship with his dad.
Yeah.
But yes, I think it's a very solid series from what I can recall. That was cut depressingly short. I would have liked to have seen what they did if they had taken it further.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? How it's been 10 years since Liz Sladen passed away, which is...
It's nuts, isn't it? Yeah.
It's mad. I need to rewatch it as well, because I think when it was out, when it started, I think I was 11. So I think for the first 2 or 3 years, I was the right age for it. And then, as you do when you're a teen, you're like, oh, I'm not gonna watch this on CBBC, but I have seen them all at some point, maybe not on broadcast, but yeah, I feel I need to do the same as you and sort of buy the box set and go back and rewatch it all, because it was a good show for what it was. It was a very good show. Yeah,
I think we need great children's TV as well, and not just very very young kids, but that sort of in between, that sort of stepping stone from very young kids TV to something family friendly but challenging like Doctor Who.
Absolutely.
And it's also just great to because Elizabeth Sladen was just such a great lead as well.
That she was. I miss Liz Sladen now. I mean, we all have, but it's just every time we mention it, it's oh man.
I'm really looking forward to that upcoming Big Finish Return of the Cybermen story. Yes, because her daughter's going to be playing her.
Yeah, that'll be good. And she's doing some for the third Doctor range, I think. I read.
You've got Caroline John, who plays Liz, I think.
Yeah.
It's her daughter as well who's playing her.
It's just someone posted it on Twitter the other day, I think, either the cover of it, and they just went, there's something really surreal about all that, because it was the third Doctor, Liz, Sarah, and the Brigadier, and it's there's something really surreal about a drama being released where all of the box artists, the artists on the box have passed away.
Yeah,
and I was that's mad.
There was an interesting discussion when Jonathan Carlisle was cast as John Hurt's War Doctor, and full disclosure, he was Graham in the Collateral of Ivanhoe. So I might be a bit biased, but yeah, John Carlisle is great. He's very talented, got great work ethic. And when they were oh, we've cast someone as John Hurt, I was oh, Jonathan Carly's good. I hope they got someone like him. Oh, they got him.
They got him.
They got him. He was great. So I'm looking forward to that set. But there was an interesting discussion about how long do you leave it? It's there's no right answer.
No.
But because it is spin-off Big Finish media, if you wanted to engage with that media, you can choose not to buy it, or you can wait until your personal threshold of time has passed. Like, yeah, and like it's also like going to be John Hurt's birthday like later on this week and stuff. So
yeah, exactly.
And I only know that because I've got the Doctor Who Perfect Shots account, so I've got some stuff set up for that day.
Nice.
I don't just have like John Hurt's birthday memorized.
You got a big poster of him on your wall, out of shot, like, you know.
I actually have a poster of John Hurt's. It's not in this room. It's somewhere. But I got a print of him like back in 2014 or something. It's somewhere. But yeah,
He's my one regret at conventions. The biggest one I went to was London Comic Con in 2014, I think, and he was there, and he was like the one person I didn't get a chance to see. And obviously now it's like, because he's no longer with us. I mean, it was a good con, but I think I just ran out of money. You know, as like an 18-year-old with a finite amount of money. Yeah, I had to pick and choose. I had to do the horrible thing of picking, right, who am I going to see? Who do I want a picture with or an autograph from? But yeah, no. Bless him. We've got one from Aspiring E-Being at Gecko Yawn on Twitter, who says, if Toby Whithouse had taken over instead of Chris Chibnall, what direction do you reckon the show would have gone in? No hate to either.
No, yeah, because I think when Stephen Moffat announced that he would be stepping down, I can't remember if it was announced at the same time that Chibnall would be taking over. I think it might have been. But yeah, because Toby Whithouse was kind of the definitive 12th Doctor writer outside of Stephen Moffat. But only because he wrote Under the Lake and Before the Flood, which is an incredible story.
Absolutely.
And like, he did School Reunion, God Complex, and some terrific stuff. But yeah, it's interesting because we obviously don't know what his creative like thesis is or like what direction he would have taken the show. But he was the showrunner of Being Human, I think, like Noughts and Crosses, and with Mallory Blackman, of course. So he's got great experience as actually running a show. So I don't doubt that he would have been able to pull it off.
Absolutely.
But yeah, it's there is a parallel universe out there where Toby Whithouse was the next announced showrunner, and I'd be very interested to know what that would have been. But yeah, it's dealing with a lot of hypotheticals though that I'm in no place to explore.
No, that's fair.
But he would have been, I think, a very qualified writer to take over. And who knows? Like he might still do. Like he's still, he's still working in the industry. He's still show running projects.
Yeah.
And he's quite prolific in numerous other mediums. Like I think he does comic books as well.
Well, there you go. Who knows? Maybe one day. Maybe we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah,
but,
and there's also the idea that he could just come back and write the odd script or two as well.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'd be very happy to see him come back, but particularly if he's able to put something together like School Reunion or Before the Flood.
And the second part of that question from the same person, Aspiring E-Being, was who would your ideal post Moffat showrunner pick be? Which I think is an interesting question.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Let me just double check what the because there was one pick, like it was either Chris Chibnall or it was going to be somebody else, maybe Neil Cross, who did Hyde and The Rings of Akaten, but he's also the showrunner of Luther.
Right.
So it's a case where like I think you don't want to start you don't want like a staff writer who hasn't showrun a show before to their first one to be Doctor Who. Not saying they couldn't do it, but I think you want that experienced guiding hand, and then you nurture new talent around you, which I think, to his credit, Chris Chibnall has been doing a terrific job of cultivating that talent, like Vinay Patel, Maxine Alderton, Joy Wilkinson, etc.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm not sure who I would have picked outside of Chris Chibnall. Was my choice at the time. The only thing I was hesitant about at the time was that he hadn't written for the show since 2011. So there was like a good 4 or 5 year gap, but he did Broadchurch in that time.
That he did.
So yeah, I've only watched series 1, but that's a really great series. It would have been Neil Cross, Chris Chibnall, or maybe Toby Whithouse. They would have been my picks.
Good selection. The next one we have is from Mario Bowser 494 or Big Teddy Whitey on Twitter, who says, "Did you ever get your collection box set discs back after they were stolen? by Revenge of the Cybermen.
This is a loose end that I do need to resolve on camera, because we've got the season 8 collection coming out next month, I think.
We do, yeah.
So I need to ramp those up again, but I want to take a different approach to them. But yeah, I've got them back. To answer the question, I've got them back. How I've got them back is yet to be determined. Hopefully it'll be fun and novel and potentially horrific.
There you go. Mario will be looking forward to that for sure. Jamie Bevan, or Jerry the Ferry 1, says, out of all the member Christmas events, like your Dalekcember and Cybercember, which one was your favourite? And, well, he says, do you have plans for a third? I think we covered that earlier. But so which one's your fave?
Cybercember. Absolutely, yeah. Because I think... because, you know, I was a year better and a year more refined, and just generally execution, I think it's better. But also because Cybermen stories are so much more varied, and there's also a lot of stuff to poke fun at as well. Like Cyber Steve and Cyber Jeff, they were always fun.
Loved Cyber Steve and Cyber Jeff, the recurring characters.
I love them too. But especially with like Attack of the Cybermen, like you've got that moment where the explosives are about to be set off. And the Cybermen just goes shoo, shoo. Like he does the hand motions, and there's like you're not going to get a Dalek to do that. Like, there's so much fun to be explored with the Cybermen. But also I think the only reason you might prefer Dalekcember is because the videos are shorter. But when we go from like a 7-hour gap to like a 7-hour series to a 10-hour series, then length and brevity is kind of a relative term here. Yeah. But also with Cybercember, I think with the collaborative aspects and the interview with Steve Hughes and talking about Big Finish and the video games and all the other aspects, it's just I think it's a more varied marathon. Yeah. And like exploring the wilderness years was a lot of fun. Yes, I'd say Cybercember's my favourite of the two.
Not fab. There you go. And Harry McHugh wants to know, again, we sort of touched on it, but who would you pick as the next showrunner? So would someone like Neil Cross or Toby Whithouse still come into the equation for you, or? I'm not sure. I've not given this whole like general question a lot of thought, to be honest. Because who knows who could blast onto the scene in the next couple of years while Chibnall's still working. I think they might want to try and get a big name, someone like Phoebe Waller-Bridge. Or someone like Michaela Cole, I think, who did I May Destroy You. Yeah. Yes, someone like her. I think that they would maybe want to be going in that direction. Well, even someone like, say, Vinay Patel, who was who worked on what's that show? Murdered by My Husband. Yeah. Obviously, that's not Doctor Who friendly material. Murdered by My Father. That's the show. Sorry, just googled it now. And he was a BAFTA nominee for things like that. So he's got the pedigree, and he's definitely got the talents. Like Demons of the Punjab and the first half of Fugitive of the Jadoon, terrific. So it'd be interesting to see what he would do with the series. I want to see what Maxine Alderson does during Series 13, because I think she's been listed as a key writer. She wrote Haunting of Villa Diodati. So if you have to talk about the actual current writers who are working actively on the show, it would be one of those two. But maybe Mallory Blackman could be a good choice, because she's of course doing Noughts and Crosses. She's working on that with the BBC. Yeah. So they've done it. Whereas I think Stephen Moffat is a great writer, but I think it was kind of difficult for him to lay the groundwork for who would take over from him. Yeah. Whereas with Russell, it was obvious. After Russ T Davies, it was obviously going to be maybe Stephen Moffat or Mark Gatiss or someone. Yeah. Whereas with Moffat, it was a bit more unclear. But I think with Chibnall, we've got a few great contenders there. I think he's done a great job at cultivating the talent. There you go. The stylish one says, "What's your favourite Doctor Who Christmas special?"
So if we're talking about just the Christmas ones, probably Christmas Invasion. Okay. I think it peaked there. The festive specials did peak with Christmas Invasion. I think it's having more fun with the Christmas concept. I think a lot of the festive specials treated Christmas as an obligation.
Yeah, I'd agree with you there. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's kind of because I know a lot of people love Twice Upon a Time, but I do think that's like the weakest Christmas special. Like you started with the strongest one, and then by the end you've got Twice Upon a Time at the bottom. In my humble opinion, but yeah, I think Christmas Invasion. But if we expand it to like New Year as well, Resolution's really strong. That's a really solid story, I think. Yeah. So Christmas Invasion or Resolution.
Two sides of the opposites there. I like that.
Don't sleep on Return of Dr. Mysterio, though. I'm not saying it's the best, but I revisited that quite recently. That's surprisingly strong. I think if that was just plonked in the middle of series 9 or 10, that would be a fan favourite.
Yeah, such a fun story, Dr. Mysterio. I think it just gets lumped too much. People think, oh, it's the one where they try to be Marvel. And it's like, no, it's so much more. So much more than that.
I think that is the weakest part of it, though. But the rest of the stuff around it, and Capaldi and Matt Lucas are a fun duo, and he unleashes Pokemon in a Japanese office.
Because of course he does. So.
And Capaldi's just great fun there.
Yeah, he is. We've got one from Ben, who goes by Real Enthusiast, who says, if you could choose an actor to play a future Doctor, who would it be? And I'll just disclose at the time of recording, this whole rumour of Jodie leaving is still a rumour. By the time this goes out, it might have been confirmed, denied, but yeah, just a disclaimer. We don't know as of yet. So
yeah. One I've always had, for the past 10 years, who I've been kind of rooting for is James Nesbitt, but I think he might be a bit too old for it now. But
okay,
how old is his?
I was going to say, James, is he like late 30s, early 40s, or is he a bit older than that?
I think he's in his 50s.
Is he?
He is 50s. He's 55.
Oh right, okay. Well, I've probably just flattered him there quite a lot. So.
But no, he's aged well. But to be fair, Capaldi was maybe around the same age when he was cast. Maybe he's 62 now, so. Yeah, so he would have been. Yes, I think James Nesbitt is maybe at the same age. Maybe maths fails me, but yeah, I think he would have been a great pick. But yeah, they should just do what the tabloids always say and bring David Tennant back. Like Jodie will regenerate into David Tennant, but it's the haggard, crazy David Tennant from Staged.
Do what the tabloids say and cast bloody Chris Marshall, because they keep harping on about that. I know they've harped on about it for years.
One day someone's gonna be right. It's gonna happen someday, maybe. There's what's gonna happen though is we're gonna think it's gonna be a big actor like maybe Phoebe Waller-Bridge or Michael Sheen or Richard Ayoade, etc. And then it's just gonna be someone who we weren't expecting, as is normally the case. Yeah. And we're gonna be very happy.
Yeah. Absolutely, fingers crossed. But I mean, I hope Jodie stays. Again, it's just a rumor. I want to see. I'd love her to do this upcoming series and then at least the next one. Again, as whatever she does, fair play to her. Yeah. We've got one from Parodis who says, "Hi, Mr. TARDIS. I'm interested in your thoughts on Doctor Who as a US and international export. Do you think that the UK viewing figures become less relevant to the show's lifespan as it becomes more popular overseas?"
I think the viewing figures generally, because that's always like an interesting discussion, even if it is a completely useless discussion.
Oh, it is.
Because especially because with like streaming and everything, like people became fans of like Breaking Bad like 5 seasons in because they were able to watch it all on Netflix and then catch up in time for the finale. Like the viewing figures, while an interesting talking point, aren't always like the baseline. Well, no, they're normally like the bare minimum for how big the fandom is. Yeah. And when you've got like international figures, like I think Revolution of the Daleks, like for the week it was broadcast in America, it was like ranked 38, which like obviously when you put it like that, it doesn't sound great. But when I've seen the listing. And like the top 20 is just dominated by CNN News, dominated by sporting events. Yeah. I've not looked at the whole list, but in terms of like scripted dramas, Doctor Who was like one of the most viewed things that week. Yeah. So that's actually really good. But yeah, I think if Doctor Who was doing badly in the general TV landscape, then there'd be issues. But it was second for New Year's Day. It was like 8th for the whole week. Like it in terms of like the thousands of rankings, and it's there in the top 10. Shows in a healthy place. But as a US export, I don't know all of the figures from America. But as long as like the merchandise is selling overseas, as long as there's always demand for it, and even if the current show isn't doing like great in certain metrics. If the classic series Blu-rays and box sets and the classic series merchandise is continuing, and of course Big Finish is, I don't know their numbers, but I imagine they're doing something right.
Yeah.
Then the show's in a healthy place, both at home and abroad. I don't know. Maybe they should lean into the American aspect a little bit more. But like we were even saying, like not even in a whole they go to New York or they go to London type of way. Like go to a more rural, smaller area in America and tell that smaller story. I think that would add the flavour. That'd be fun.
Yeah. I just think with the whole viewing figures thing, I know you said it's a often useless discussion because I know you've said it and I know I've said it as well. It's like the bottom line is like the viewing figures that meant something in like 1983 are not the same as they are now, and that's just the bottom line. That's just that's a fact, arguably. But
your viewing figure series like pointed out like how towards the end of the Patrick Troughton era was like properly descending and. Yeah, so and William Hartnell was the first Not My Doctor.
Yeah,
basically when John Pertwee took over, you're gonna have these peaks and valleys. Yeah, and I think once culturally people have cooled the hell down, I think Jodie Whittaker's era is going to be looked on a bit better, kind of like how Capaldi's era is. Now, like it's the bias, it's the rose tinted glasses, and we can ignore. Like I don't go back and watch Lie of the Land. I don't go back and watch the Monk trilogy. I go back and watch Before the Flood and Heaven Sent, and I ignore the stuff that I wasn't a fan of, and that colours my perception of the era to an extent. And everyone does that.
Yeah, of course they do. We've got one from Vincent Blonde who says, "In your opinion, what are the strengths and weaknesses of the 3 different New Who eras?"
Strengths and weaknesses. So if we're going from like Russ T Davies, Stephen Moffat, and
then
Chris
Chibs,
Chibnall?
yeah.
Okay, so I'm probably gonna meander all over the place, but for strengths for Russell, like the whole grounded, like human element, and just how varied his companions were. Like he introduced families to like Rose's family, Martha and Donna's family, but none of them felt the same. Like Wilf is not the same as Jackie. Francine Jones is not the same as Sylvia Noble. And that if they had been cut and paste, we wouldn't have minded or noticed to an extent. But he writes such varied and textured characters, and he pushes the characters as well. Even if it's not his scripts, it's still his guiding hand for stories like Dalek as well, which really pushes the Ninth Doctor, and stories like Midnight, which literally turns the 10th Doctor's strengths against him, which is why it's my favourite of his stories. And he pushes his characters in a way that other showrunners are maybe, I don't know if they're like afraid to, or they don't quite know how to bring them back. But Russell was right to do that like towards the end of the 10th Doctor's era, where he is literally going to die. So let's really challenge him.
Absolutely.
His weakness... What's Russell's weakness? What... He it's hard to say that Russ T Davies has like a big all-encompassing weakness. I'm looking forward to his what's it called, regression of the Daleks.
Oh, and It's a Sin, yeah.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. A guy who was bold enough to do that.
He just does what he wants now, doesn't he? He just doesn't care.
Respect him. I almost met him as well. He's a very tall guy. I'm not going to say no to him. If I'm like a showrunner or a scriptwriter. And I'll be like, Russell, I've got some notes. Oh, don't kill me, don't kill me. Even if he's super friendly, he's a tall guy. I think maybe he lets the stakes get a bit too high, so he does need to press a big red button to stop it. Like we saw that with Series 3 and Series 4, those finales in particular. I also wasn't a fan of Rose towards the end, but I think because Russell, he said that when growing up he didn't want to be the Doctor, he wanted to be a companion. So he wrote a lot of himself into Rose and kind of fell in love with that character. And I think that wasn't an aspect I really appreciated. Kind of like how Moffat kind of fell in love with Clara, I think. But that segues nicely into.
It does, almost like it was planned.
But yeah, as a strength for Moffat, of course, he made the show bigger internationally than it ever had been before. So as a showrunner, that's. Even if his stories were terrible, you'd have to respect that. But thankfully, he did have some great stories as well.
He did, yeah.
I think he played around with time, that this is a time travel show, which often the TARDIS lands at a place and that's all the time travel stuff you get. But no, he messes around with when people meet each other, the relationships and the connections that they make across these, like, across the fourth dimension, to put it in a pretentious way. So yeah, I really appreciate and loved that. And like, he could write like great, witty, sparkling dialogue in his sleep. Like, the guy's a really great wordsmith. I love just reading Moffat scripts. Like, just the scripts himself, and the prose is like so like fun and witty. Like, sometimes it's a bit much. Like, if you've read the first draft for Blink, like that's an interesting read. Like, and how Sally Sparrow is calling everyone and everything sexy. But like, yeah, that's one weakness.
Moffat liked the word sexy a bit too much, I think.
A bit too. I think like Moffat kind of needed someone to like maybe stop him.
Yeah.
I think he needed like a Donna Noble, Russell T Davies figure to stop him sometimes.
Yeah.
But I think that's why Series 5 and the beginning of 6 might have been his strongest stuff, because he did have someone maybe reining him in a little bit.
Yeah.
I also think, I don't know if it's the right term, I heard someone mention this, he's kind of like a gender absolutist writer, where he wholly subscribes to the idea that men are from Mars and women are from Venus.
Oh, okay.
And
right,
he wholly subscribes to this idea that like women are the superior gender, with the exception of the odd, very special individual, like Sherlock Holmes, or the Doctor, the monolith who won't love you back. He's a very, very gender absolutist writer, which sometimes works, and in a lot of cases with Clara over sustained episodes and years, can really wear out its welcome. I think like Amy Pond stayed on for a bit longer than she should have done. As well, and Clara as well for like an entire year. But then I love Bill. Bill is like proper down to earth. Bill's one of the best companions. And as for Chibnall, I think you said before, he's a great guiding hand and influence in getting very talented people to work on the show, like the writers that he's cultivating. I also do like his sense of ITV drama. Like, I do like the Broadchurch prestige that he brings to it, and that these are relatively grounded characters. But as for his weaknesses, I think he is just, maybe, I don't know, without knowing the behind the scenes, whether or not he is mandated to add 20 more plot elements than he should. But yeah, and like with Resolution in particular, you can see the characters waiting to be explored and burst from their moorings. It's just not happening. No. I've got a theory about what the Jodie Whittaker era is kind of building to. How she starts as this optimistic traveller of the universe with this family, and then over the course of her era, it's slowly taken away from her. Like, she loses half of her fam, she loses her own sense of identity and self and everything, and like it's kind of like analogous of the millennial experience, how we start off optimistic and hopeful, and then the world just beats us down. So let's see where Series 13 takes the character, or where we go.
No,
I think Chibnall just needs to he needs to like hire someone to stand behind him with a long ruler, and whenever he's like, oh, let's write another character, that person's legally obligated to tap him on the head.
Yeah, I like that. Big long ruler.
Yeah, I don't even want him to be like whacked on the head. Just a little. Nope. Don't add that other character. Don't add that other subplot. Nope. Yeah.
There you go.
That's my long-winded answer.
No, thank you. Again, I mean, it was a big question, to be fair, but I think you put it in a very succinct way. And the last one I have from Twitter is from Matt Perry, who says, do you think the Who fandom can become a more positive place again in the future, or is it beyond fixing? And I guess this sort of ties into what I was saying about talking about Twitter, because as you say, I'd say for the majority, the people like me and you interact with, it's a very positive space. There's a lot of love there. There's a lot of collaboration. But I suppose like in any community or fandom, there are people who aren't like that. And I think we see that most vocally on Twitter and social media. I think that's, not too far of a stretch to say. So, yeah, what do you think about that? Is it beyond fixing in that sense, or is it...
It's kind of interesting, because I've seen this with a lot of other fandoms. It's the people who, like, without naming names, you would call like these bad faith actors and these instigators of this like this whole black hole of negativity, that they kind of keep to keep to themselves. Like they don't engage in the watch-alongs, and they don't engage with like other fans and stuff like that. Obviously, that's not to say they're not fans, and they don't have to engage with watch-alongs and Twitter and everything to be a fan. Obviously, that I'm not into that gatekeeping stuff.
No.
But it's like they kind of have their own little corner, their own little hornet's nest, so to speak, where they're kind of like cultivating an audience who aren't really quite interested in the show. Like, you get these people who are like, I don't even watch the show, but like I just complain about it. It's why they're able to spout such terrible like mistruths and like misrepresentations of what the show isn't doing. Like someone complaining how Fugitive of the Judoon had like a what was it, like, oh, a white male evil villain in Fugitive of the Judoon, and it's like, that didn't even happen. That literally didn't even happen, and you're complaining about it to an audience who are just lapping it up uncritically.
Yeah.
And it's like, what the hell? Like, so like, I think one issue is that when you grow up and you have your ideas challenged in the real world and stuff like that, that's part of the growing experience. But when you have these echo chambers where that arrested development is able to carry on, it's harmful to people's growth, to be honest. It's not a healthy mindset.
No.
But whether or not it can be fixed, there's a concept called the Overton window, and it's the idea that what happens like in culture is like what becomes acceptable to say, it's how like we're able to go from like 10, 15 years ago to like, yeah, equality, all great stuff, and then like now the culture has shifted, the Overton window has shifted to a place where like now you can read headlines and it's like enemies of the people and like these nefarious groups, like, you know, pick your poison, like women, trans, Jews, etc. These are the ones who are holding society back now, and like this makes its way into all forms of discourse. Like if I have to hear one more person say that Chris Chibnall is like secretly like caballing with the Jewish community to bring down the white man, I'm gonna kill myself. But some people believe this, and it's like, and like some people I think are just a bit too far gone. But it is also a case of like that behavior and that rhetoric is rewarded with like ad revenue and clout and Patreon dollars and stuff like that. So it is able to become self-sustaining. And as someone who's been following this for like 6 or 7 years, because like culture, like media and discourse and conversation and stuff, I don't quite know what will fix it other than like a whole change to how internet content is like spread to people and algorithms and things like that. And like the enabling of platforms to allow this behavior and stuff like that. But of course that becomes like slippery slopes and censorship and stuff like that. It's just a case of just being a better member of the community in a sense, to try and like not necessarily directly combat it, but just to be like work in the community as like a what do you call it, like an outside virus or something, like someone who is able to just like that's its own thing in the corner. Hopefully that will go away. I don't have the answers, unfortunately, for this. It's a much bigger, broader topic, but when you've got like I think it was like back in December, I can't remember the constituency, but it was like a conservative like pamphlet, a conservative
oh yes,
leaflet.
I remember. Yeah.
And it was like, okay, so just lie that, just say the first thing that comes into your head. Let's get rid of woke culture, including things like Doctor Who. But it's like, I just really want to talk to who wrote that and be like, what does woke mean? Like, the moment you ask them the questions and everything unravels. Like, it's interesting when they don't define the terms. They're very nebulous with the language.
Because I think woke as well gets thrown around so much, it hardly, I think, means anything anymore. Because it's like almost being used for anything people don't like. Oh, that's woke. And it's like, is it? Like, you know, it's become this blanket term of. But do you think it stretches to the other way as well? Like, I know there's been a lot of talk recently in the community about I guess what they term as toxic positivity, where say you love Jodie's era, everything about it is perfect, and someone say like me or you comes along and respectfully offers why they don't like it, but then you go, no, you're incorrect, you need to love, you know, that sort of overwhelming positivity. That do you think it applies to that as well?
I've been quite lucky in that I've not engaged a lot with that, and I've not seen it too much. Like, I'm not saying it doesn't happen. But I think that is relatively like harmless in a way. Like, obviously, like relative broad terms here. I'm sure that like someone has been very upset or offended or maybe like emotionally hurt by some of the rhetoric and stuff like that. Like I know that some people took issue with John Bishop being cast because they really, really wanted their all-female TARDIS team. But like, yeah, I think a lot of that is people who just need to understand that it's not a case of you weren't going to get it was either the Doctor and Yaz or the Doctor, Yaz and Dan. Like it wasn't a choice between those two. It was a choice between like who is cast as Dan. That's the decision. Like you were always going to get Dan.
Yeah, like they've had it planned
so,
for God knows how long.
Yeah, so you don't blame John Bishop. You don't hurl that at him. You don't bring that to his door. Like that. Yeah, absolutely. That's not respectful and that's not right. Yeah, it's also people can let the headcanons of like, oh, we were definitely only going to get the Doctor and Yaz this season, even though there was no confirmation. They let the headcanons really get away with them. Yeah, I think it is an issue. I just don't think it's an issue in the same way. I think it's something that you can combat and try and like call out when you can. But I think there's a difference between like I'm very angry that we didn't get an all-female TARDIS team and them damn Muslims being on my TV show. Like I think there's a very distinct difference. You can walk and chew gum at the same time. You can combat both.
Yeah.
But for me, my priority is the combating the latter as opposed to the former. But I think because of I'm quite liberal with the block button on Twitter, so I do because I don't want people posting misinformation and stuff on my Twitter for other people to read.
No, for sure.
So I'm quite liberal with that, and also for my sake, so I don't argue with everyone. So I don't tend to see that stuff as much as I used to.
Yeah. No, it's probably I think it's good in a way so you don't see it as much because I think I realise at some point is sometimes the more you engage with it and sometimes falling on deaf ears, it's quite taxing mentally. Like it's a very draining process in a way. So I think it's good to sort of, I guess say like either, pick your battles or just not engage with it as much if it's not directly affecting you and yourself, I suppose. Yeah. But it is interesting when like the two like little bubbles sort of like have a bit of overlap with them and they sort of, like they converge with each other. Like when if you like people in the UK will be aware of a station called Talk Radio. Where they're basically a disinformation radio station. They got banned off of YouTube because they were spreading misinformation about COVID-19. And so that meant that for a couple of hours or like a day or two, my video talking about Doctor Who was like one of the most prominent talk radio things on YouTube, where people searched for it, wanting to get their daily fix of misinformation, or who we're going to be angry about today, and they found my video, and it was so interesting, like seeing the comments. Like they're not remotely engaging with the argument; they're just using like rhetoric and ad hominem and stuff like that. They don't actually have a point, and I think they know that. So it's a case of like, they've got to figure out themselves, or does someone just? I don't know what the answer is, but it's very interesting when you can like try and you want to have a thoughtful discussion about should only gay actors play gay characters and stuff. I think there's a discussion to be had, but you've got to approach it in good faith, and you've got to also be able to know very quickly when someone is obviously not talking about it in good faith. I think being able to quickly distinguish that is a very good way to just quickly step away from that conversation for your own like sanity as well. Just to be able to very quickly know, like when someone starts talking about woke stuff, that's a very good cue to like this person's not get out of there.
Get out of there. Like if you want to fight that battle, go for it. But I think maybe for your own sake, know which ones you can step away from.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for answering those Twitter questions. I'm sure everyone appreciated it. And if you listen, your question wasn't read out, you might have left it whilst we've been recording. So apologies. And I'd love for this podcast to be 4 hours, but alas, got to keep to a rhythm. We'll start wrapping things up. But I had a few questions that I've started to ask a lot of my guests on the show. I hope you don't mind. Being one thing I like to do is my first, my last, my everything in tribute to the great Barry White. But I won't sing for you. I don't sing for many people. So my first, they're quite simple. Really. My first is your first Doctor Who story ever. Your last being the last Doctor Who you've watched. So that could be Revolution on New Year's Day, or it could be something since then. And your everything is if you had all access to Doctor Who, including the missing episodes. Imagine we found them all, and it all gets washed away. What's the one that you'd save? basically?
So my first one was probably the 2150 AD Peter Cushing film.
Oh, nice.
I think, yeah, because I remember my very, very first one was the cliffhanger to part 1 of the Sontaran experiment. When I walk into a room, see General Steyer, I think, take his helmet off.
Yeah.
And I just screamed and ran out the room. But then my first like extended interaction was the Peter Cushing film. I remember like Roberta Tovey as Susan. She's in the cabin. I forget the other character's name, but yeah, they wake up, they go to the window, open the blinds, and the Dalek's there.
Yeah.
I'd say probably that one. That was my first extended interaction with Doctor Who. Mm-hmm. Last, it was Revolution of the Daleks. But before that, because I've recently got BritBox.
Oh yeah.
Because I upgraded my phone plan, so I got like 6 months free of BritBox. So I've been making my way through some of the Troughton era. So like Macra Terror, I watched for the first time last year.
Yeah.
Like Macra Terror, the animated version, it's really good. That's a really good story.
It is, yeah.
But for Cybercember, I watched The Wheel in Space, so that was probably I didn't like it, but that was probably outside of like Revolution of the Daleks was my latest. Latest one. Cool. It's just a 6-part story of just the Cybermen doing the most convoluted plan I've ever seen. Their plan relies on a time traveler turning up on a spaceship and stopping it from getting destroyed. A scientific advisor wrote that story, and but like massive respect to Kit Pedler and Jerry Davis and that. Don't know how that happened, but who am I kidding? If they animate it, I'll watch it. I'll watch it again if they animate it and recreate it. Which I'm like, even the weaker stories, in my opinion, should still be preserved and animated. But it was the one like my Desert Island story.
Yeah, if you like, episode.
I don't know, because I'm trying to think of a story that would like, which is the one where I need to preserve it culturally because it's culturally significant. Probably would be the Daleks, so the William Hartnell. First.
Okay.
Yeah, because like obviously An Unearthly Child was the first story, and it introduced so many of the elements. But the Daleks is like that's 60s like television incarnate, basically.
Oh yeah.
Maybe even the Daleks' Invasion of Earth. But either way, it would be a black and white, probably Hartnell story. If it had to be like if it had to be like the revived series, it'd be fun to like just really mess around with the historians. The Unicorn and the Wasp. And this is the culturally significant one.
This is the one.
This is where Doctor Who 21st century TV peaked. But yes, it probably would be either the Daleks or the Daleks' Invasion of Earth.
Good choices either way, man.
Yeah,
hard choice, but
probably Invasion of Earth, because it's got Susan's Goodbye, it's got the great production values and the episodes where the Daleks are like circling the landmarks and everything.
It's got more of that iconography, hasn't it? I think Invasion of Earth more than anything.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's the first TARDIS team as well. You got Barbarine, Susan, the first Doctor. Maybe Invasion of Earth. Yeah.
Good. I think that's the earliest pick we've had for the My Everything slot we've had so far, like in terms of the show's history. So no, it's interesting.
Am I allowed to know what the other company is? What is being preserved on this desert island?
Ooh, I'm trying. We've had a lot of. I think a lot of them has been New Who stuff. I think partly for the reason, it's what a lot of us have grown up with. The one that stands out, I know, Dalekcember picked a Terror of the Zygons because he believed that had sort of a bit of everything, really, about what he believed Doctor Who to be. And I think that was the oldest one we've had so far, actually, before now. So yeah, if anyone wants to beat Dalek Invasion of Earth to preserve, you've only got like 9 stories to do it. But
so someone's going to pick the unaired pilot episode of Doctor Who.
Where the doors crash and all that sort of stuff, yeah.
And then that one just wins. That's the earliest one.
That's the ultimate one, yeah. The other thing I like to ask people is, in the general Doctor Who fandom, that fandom has a pretty big consensus on what is like a great story and what's a bad story. So I like to ask people, what's a story that fandom or the community you see is like, oh no, that's not good, that's a bad one. But you're like, I kind of love it. The example I always have is the Twin Dilemma. That's the worst story, but I actually really like it. So do you have a story like that you sort of think, yeah, I like that?
Yeah, I've got a couple because I'm not as well versed in the classic series as many other people, and also like not as yourself. Yeah, I've got quite a few blind spots, particularly with the second and third Doctor's era.
Okay.
But for the contrarian opinions, I gravitate to stories like the Ghost Monument, where I think like narratively and like the characters are a bit arch and things like that, but it's got such an incredible feel to the story. Like the opening 10 to 15 minutes where they land on the planet Desolation, I think it's called. Like Doctor Who has never looked or felt like that, and I loved it. Like the one like circling shot of the spaceship, particularly when I can't remember the character's name. It's Chris Chibnall. That's one of his weaknesses. He names his characters stupid names. I remember Yed Lamy from Ascension of the Cybermen, but yeah. And he gets off his chair. This is all in one shot. He gets off his chair, opens up a hatch from the spaceship, and pulls up an entire cord, like a switch to like activate the manual shields. And then they go to the back of the ship and jettison the back, and that's like all in one take. Yeah. And it's like this feels like an actual lived-in environment. And then they land on Graham. That keeps happening. Graham and Ryan, they've merged to become one super companion with a really weird accent. But yes, and they're walking across the desert, and you can see the spaceship re-enter behind them, and it's coming. But yeah, it's and Mark Tondere's direction on that story is impact. It's one of the best looking episodes visually. Characters are a bit flat and everything, but I love the idea of the space race where they're competing to get to the Ghost Monument. In this planet, that's a great premise, and the episode's got a great rhythm and pace to it. And but people talk about it as like it's one of the worst stories of the era, and I'm just there watching it, like enraptured at the feel of this story and visually, just how no other episode of the revived series feels like that, and it's incredible.
Yeah.
But the other one is the Rings of Akatem.
Where, interesting.
But it's a story that's completely like it's predominantly driven by emotion. It's got some cheap mask effects and some cheap costumes and everything, and they're just throwing everything they had in storage at this planet of Akaten. But if I'm not watching Doctor Who for shaky effects and things like that, what am I watching it for? But yeah, and it did more to characterize Clara in like 45 minutes than like 2.5 actual seasons of the show. I also really love the idea of like the currency on that planet is something that is like an emotional sentimental value. I think that was a really cool idea to explore, and then to bring it back around with the leaf to take down the Sun God. And the Doctor just does shout at a green screen for a good couple of minutes, but Matt Smith sells it. Like the speech he gives to the Sun. The music's really cool as well. Some great variations of I Am the Doctor. Like I get why people don't like it, but for me it just hits the right notes. And I really appreciated what it was going for. I don't think it sticks the landing completely, but during Series 7, where so many stories are just really just going through the motions, to actually kind of aim for the fences and to try, like, even if I hated the story, I'd still admire it for going so big with its ideas and really committing to it. Kind of like Sleep No More. Like, I don't think Sleep No More works, but it's committing to an aesthetic and it's committing to a tone.
It's having a damn good go at it.
And like I'd rather like obviously principled failure is still failure, but I admire a principled failure as opposed to just a meandering, middling like story. I kind of like wish that more stories would benefit from that. Like it takes you away as a story that I think fan consensus is generally really positive on it, but I would put that in a similar category to Rings of Akaten, where it's like an emotionally driven story where you've got a character like Ribbons who doesn't do anything. Like, he's just there to be a really interesting and fun presence. And like Douglas Adams would be proud.
Yeah.
But it's like on that wavelength. And those stories I really appreciate.
I think Rings of Akaten got me with the whole space bike thing. I think when they do, I watch that and I'm like, okay. But you're right, it's Doctor Who doing shaky effects, so I'm like, okay, fair enough. But
it's bad green screen. Like, I can't defend the bike. But yeah, I just remembered that lovely scene where like Matt Smith's Doctor is talking to that young girl, and like it's like, no, I'm not just saying that you're like a unique, wonderful person to make you feel better. You are genuinely like a mathematical miracle, like because of everything that has happened in the universe to culminate in you being here right now.
Yeah.
And I think that's a wonderful sentiment, and it doesn't feel like he's talking down to her either.
No.
He's like, no, this is how the universe works, and it's incredible that you're here. And yeah, I love it.
I mean, Matt Smith always, I think, sold the sort of philosophical, whimsical nature of the Doctor so well, especially, I know it's the whole, he's the old man trapped in a young man's body, but I think so many younger actors, like, I think when you're given stuff like that has such, brevity and such weight, and like, speaking as a young actor, it's difficult, because obviously, like, you still live in life. They always say it's easier for someone who's older to, I guess, maybe connect with that because they've lived more of life. But Matt Smith always just sold that, as you say, really, really well. So
yeah, I think Matt Smith and David Tennant in particular really carried themselves so well in that role. Like they were young. Like David Tennant was in his mid-30s, I think.
Yeah,
but
I think so.
Yeah, he still carried like the weight of someone with centuries of experience behind him. Particularly, he was very good at like his 1,000-yard stare as well. like
hence all the memes since.
Yeah, hair trembles with emotion.
Yeah,
yeah, but he was he was good at it. And he carried it off well. And with Peter Capaldi, I think the only thing that really notably aged him was like his weird running, where he like. His legs are oddly spread apart when he's running. I don't know why, but either way, it's still fun. But he's able to still be really fun and energetic, and and even like William Hartnell, some of his funniest moments are when he's like a kid. He's like a kid.
Yeah,
he's like hiding in a Dalek prop and going.
Yeah, just for no real reason. It's so good. And the final question to sort of bring us to the end is something we've all probably thought as Doctor Who fans before at some time in our lives, which is, Will, if you were in charge of the franchise or running the show, what would you want to do with it?
Okay, turns out I've been a not my Doctor this whole time. Now cancel it. It's been a long con. First thing I'd do, because I don't know who I'd cast. I would just love the audition process. Yeah, just like get great actors as a companion and as the Doctor, and just screen test the hell out of those roles, and then make it from there. So I don't have like an actual actor in mind, but I want to get away from the Earth-based companion. I'd love like an alien companion.
Yeah,
and they don't even have to be like completely non-humanoid. Oh, the Doctor's with a jellyfish. Like, no, it's you can still have like a humanoid character. I'd love to do that. And then that means that when you bring the Doctor back to Earth, you're seeing this environment through fresh eyes, which I think would really endear the location to the audience as well. Like you can just imagine you get this alien who discovers lifts for the first time, and they're like, it's a box that goes up and down.
Yeah.
Like that's just off the top of my head.
There's so much potential for it, isn't there?
Yeah,
for something like that.
Yeah, and not even like comedy potential. But it's like, okay, so you sit in a stadium full of people watching people kick a ball around. That's okay. Let's have fun with it. I don't know. Like, the possibilities are endless. I'm far better than what I'm currently coming up with. But yeah, it's a good starting point. But yeah, and just I like the idea that Chibnall was doing with Series 11, where it is more or less standalone stories, but the characters do grow and change. I think the TARDIS team was too big for them to really make good on that promise. But I think a series is only as good as its companions to an extent, because the Doctor is, with certain exceptions, is kind of like a flat arc character who is kind of the constant, who is kind of there to move the plot along much quicker than it otherwise would have done. Mm-hmm. But that's like, I'm sure people are yelling at me right now saying that's no other, but like broadly speaking, their function narratively, and then you expand everything else from that. But so I think you really have to give the companion an arc, and I think giving a non-human character that would be my first like decree, chisel it in stone. Yeah. But yeah, and then like a series of standalone stories. Yeah, and kind of similar to what Chibnall's doing as well, to try and cultivate a group of like writers who, just to have some very interesting like diverse thought, to inform the stories that get told over the course of the series. That's what I'd love to do.
Yeah.
But yeah, in terms of actual stories and plot lines, I don't want to give away too much because I still don't know if I might just make my own audio stories and figure that out myself.
No, that's fair. Keep your ideas close to your chest. Yeah. Absolutely.
I'd bring Susan back. Like that is.
Oh, they've been begging for it for years.
Like, I don't, and it's not even a whole like I want something from the past to come back. That's like an unresolved plot thread.
Yeah.
Like not to be morbid, but you do have a ticking clock on that.
Well, like, yeah, because Carlisle Ford's 80 now, I think.
Yeah,
in her 80s. Yeah.
Like I'm not expecting anyone to like drop any moment, but like you do, like even similar to someone like Sophie Aldred as Ace. Like you've got to, like if you're gonna tell these stories which do kind of justify being told, you didn't need to bring back Sarah Jane Smith, but you know we're glad that they did, and Elizabeth Sladen was like incredible to bring back, but they didn't need to do that. These still feel like unresolved plot threads that do have great dramatic potential. Like you don't need to have watched 60s Doctor Who to immediately be on board with the idea of the Doctor's granddaughter. Like you don't need that prerequisite. It can help and you can lean into it, but I'm sure the audience will immediately just clock onto that emotional wavelength and let the story take them.
Yeah.
So whereas with Ace, I think you would maybe need to lean into the fan service aspect. Like not everyone's going to have watched 80s Doctor Who, even though it is only like 8 or 9 stories that she was.
Oh, with Ace, yeah, it's like 8 or 9, small handful. But again, it's expecting people to do that extra research, if you like, and go and seek it out. For the casual viewer, I suppose it might be a bit like, whoa, who's this?
Yeah, like there's a difference between the Doctor's biological granddaughter, who was abandoned years ago, and an anarchic punk character with a baseball bat from Perivale in the 80s.
Yeah, exactly.
Who had a mentor-esque type relationship with an enigmatic Scottish figure. Like, I'm embellishing somewhat, but I hope you take my point. There's some like the familial relationship, and of course, like what happened with the Time War. Like we don't need to get bogged down in that lore, but there's stuff to be told there. Like, I think there's definitely stories to be told there.
I hope they do it, because I mean, even in series 10, we saw the picture of Susan on the desk, and I thought, oh, maybe this is the season. Maybe they're gonna do it. And Peter Capaldi had been like, yeah, exactly. And Peter Capaldi had been like, yeah, I want to meet Susan and all that. And I was like, oh, this is it. They're finally doing it. And then no, we'll just forget about that. But yeah, fingers crossed. Carlisle Ford, please keep asking them, and we'll keep asking them. But with that then, I think we'll start to wrap things up. But first of all, Will, thank you so much for chatting with me here for these past few hours. It's been a blast.
No, but I've had a great time. Thank you for having me on your show.
No, not a problem. But as to close things out, as we normally do, any of your socials or your work, please feel free to shout it out now if you wish.
So you can find me yelling into the void on Twitter, at Trilby Reviews on Twitter. I've got Mr. TARDIS Reviews on Facebook. I also co-host a podcast with my fiance. That's the Monster Monday podcast, where we talk about a horror film every week. I think as we've been talking, our latest episode has gone live, talking about the Cabin in the Woods.
Nice.
We talked about that in the last episode. And of course on YouTube, Mr. TARDIS. I've got some Series 12 content coming soon. Another marathon-esque project in the vein of Cybercember, but hopefully a bit more manageable for workloads to engage with.
Yeah.
And some Big Finish stuff and all that fun stuff. I've also got if you just want just normal Doctor Who content without my tone, then you can go on a DW Perfect Shots. That's Doctor Who Perfect Shots on Twitter, where every day we post a fun shot on from the programme on Twitter, and you can submit them via DMs.
There you go. There's all the links. All of them will be in the description, and I'll put little cards wherever YouTube puts them nowadays. Changes every day. But and now I have to remember what I have to say in the outro, which is usually, if you're watching this on YouTube, thank you for watching. Please consider leaving us a like, letting us know what you thought in the comments, subscribe to the channel if you're brand new, and if you're listening on the audio versions on Spotify, Google, Apple, etc., thanks for listening. Consider giving us a follow, share us around, tell all your friends. We've got episodes coming every single week here on AMTV Radio. And yeah, to close things out, Will, again, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. Thank you.
No problem, mate. And for all of you watching and listening, I will see you in the next one.